This is the brand new Jeep Wrangler 392, the Wrangler with the V8. And today we're going to run a fuel economy test and show you all the cool gadgets and gizmos on the inside and the outside. Alright, so I'm here in Fruita, Colorado. I'm driving back to Boulder, Colorado. So we've got a bunch of highway driving, some mountain passes to climb, and we're going to see what this thing averages. It's going to fill it to full and then do the 2-click method. So we've got a good test and see what the fuel economy is. Let me go into my settings here. Reset the trip computer. We have the fuel economy reset as well. It's time to hit the road and talk about this 392. All right, well, check it out. There it is, the production version of the Wrangler 392. Now, Jeep people have been waiting for a V8 Wrangler for what? Decades? I mean, the last V8 Wrangler wasn't even a Wrangler. It was a CJ. I think it was 40 some years ago, early 1980s. And since then, it's been 6 cylinders and 4 cylinders. But here we go. 6.4 liter Hemi V8 Wrangler. Now, if you ask me, there's one vehicle we have to thank for this Jeep, and that, of course, is the Ford Bronco. Jeep is not going to take the Bronco lightly. Ford is not taking Jeep lightly. And in some ways, this is their response, the ultimate top dog Wrangler. Now, one interesting kind of bit of trivia that I learned is the VP of Jeep was telling me they painted the accents on this vehicle gold. Some say bronze, but it really is more of a gold because they designed this to be the gold standard, the ultimate Wrangler. And it's expensive. It starts at $74,000. That's right, $74K for a Wrangler. But let me show you what's under the hood because that's really what you're paying for. So 392 badging there on the hood. Interestingly enough, there are a couple of different versions of this 6.4 liter Hemi. So in the Stellantis family, you've got like the Ram 2500 pickup truck that has a 6.4 liter, but this is the one that's out of basically the Challenger Scat Pack. So it's got the SRT tuning, 470 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque. Now it is jam-packed in this engine bay. One thing about the Wrangler is, even though it looks pretty wide, a lot of that width is taken up by the fender flares, the plastic fender flares. So the engine bay itself is really pretty narrow, and this thing is positively shoehorned in here. Look how little room there is on the front of the engine. It needs a lot of air, and they've given it this really interesting hydro guide system. That is the hood scoop, but of course they wanted it to be able to ford water like any other Wrangler. So to keep water out of the engine, if it gets into the scoop, you've got these flaps that drain water out toward the back of the engine to the side of the engine, and then air makes its way down there into the intake. It's hard for me to express just how jam-packed into this vehicle the 6.4 liter Hemi is. The front cross member here, they actually had to dent the front cross member for clearance. The suspension sits an inch higher, not for additional off-road worthiness, but so that they could get the front axle to flex without running into the engine. They had to move the oil pan further back for clearance, once again with the drivetrain components, so that when you're off-road, they don't make contact with the engine. Now, tires are a little bit interesting. The new Bronco, the Sasquatch, has 35-inch tall tires. The Wrangler here is still using 33s, and that's kind of my least favorite part. It looks a little goofy, to be honest with you, especially with the inch lift. They're a little bit too small, but of course the aftermarket community will will solve that immediately. Now, this hood is ridiculously heavy, and it's actually a steel hood. It's from a diesel export model Gladiator Mojave. Don't really understand why that is, but for packaging and for production reasons, that's what they've went with for the hood. Now, $75,000 is a lot of money, but they do come pretty much fully loaded from the factory. There are a few options, albeit not many. So leather seats, heated seats, 8.4-inch Uconnect screen. But it is pretty standard Wrangler in here. I apologize, it's a little bit dusty. I was having some fun out on the trail this morning. 8-speed automatic is the only engine, 8-speed automatic is the only transmission option. And then the transfer case here is a little bit interesting. All the 392s have the Select Track full-time system. So there's a clutch in the transfer case that will distribute power front to back, depending on how it sees fit. And it's never fully in rear-wheel drive, so it's always sending some power to the front wheels, which is an interesting setup. You can see, of course, it also has the Fox shocks. And the other thing too about the 392, only available in Rubicon trim. So all the 392s have front and rear locking differentials. They all have sway bar disconnects. Out back here, pretty standard Wrangler, of course. You've got the very vertical rear end, keyless entry, LED taillights. Decent amount of space back here in the trunk. This is the bag for the Freedom panels, part of the removable top. You can see down here, we do have this interesting cargo rail system. I haven't seen this before in a Wrangler. That's not a bad idea. And the Alpine premium sound with the subwoofer. These quarter windows are removable, so you undo a couple of latches, one there, and they fold out. This one does have the power top, although if you want, you can get the standard hard top with the removable Freedom panels. So what are these for then? Maybe I misspoke. These might be for the quarter windows, because this vehicle doesn't have the Freedom panels. I think that's what this is for, actually. That's interesting. Typically in a Wrangler, the power top is a very expensive option. And here it's no exception. It is a few $1,000s to equip it with the one-touch power top. So you click a button and then this canvas roof portion up here will slide back. But two different tire options. You can get a mud terrain or this one. This is the VFG KO2, the all-terrain tire option. There is pretty much no effort to make this thing fuel efficient, as far as I can tell. I haven't found an eco mode. I don't even think it has start-stop technology. So when you get to a stoplight, this thing just keeps idling. The only kind of button to control the powertrain in terms of I don't know, maybe performance a little bit, is this button right here. So if I start up the Jeep, it's in its quiet mode right now, and if I rev it, yeah, pretty quiet. But if I click this little on button right there, it says performance exhaust on, and now listen. Wow. So that'll make it louder. I have noticed, though, even in the quiet mode, if you give it all the beans immediately, it'll start to open up those baffles in the back. And it basically becomes straight pipe to let all the exhaust rushing out. Steering wheel is a little bit different, so it's nice and thick. It's a little bit thicker than the standard Jeep. Uconnect is pretty standard. It does have a front camera, and you can clean the camera by pushing a button there. It actually has a little squirter, which will squirt it. Now, one of the issues with the full-time all-wheel drive system is, you know, not great for fuel economy either, because you're turning both the front and the rear axles under power. The seats have got more bolstering up here, but still manual. I'd like to see power seats for both the driver and the passenger side, especially at the starting price of $74K. But there you have it. Let's get back on the road and see what the final fuel economy is with the Jeep Wrangler 392. So the drive is going very well. We are just cruising along, and let me tell you what, the power in this Jeep is effortless. Here we are at the top of Vail Pass, which is a significantly steep pass here in Colorado, and it's been idling up this. I don't think I've dipped below 7th gear, maybe 6th gear for just a brief second, but the power is almost intoxicating. I mean, it's not hard to keep your foot out of it. I've been driving it pretty conservatively, but you're just brutally aware of how much low-end torque this engine has at all times. I've never felt anything like this in a Wrangler. I took that pass at the speed limit, like I said, at 2,000 RPM. In my old Gladiator on 35s, I would easily be into like the 3,500, 4,000 RPM in some places, and yeah, it's blub, 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 all the way up the mountain. So there's a pretty major difference between having the sport exhaust on and off. So that right there is the sport exhaust off. Going up the eye gauntlet, you can see that. It's not making any drone at all. Let's push the button here. You hear that? Much deeper, much louder, but potentially much more annoying. And once again, going up the Ike 7th gear, 2,000 RPM. So here we are in Golden, Colorado, and let's see how far. The computer said we went 244.5 miles. It says we averaged 20 miles per gallon. That seems pretty bold. Wow. All right, well, let's see if that's true. 19.9 according to this, 140 miles of range remaining. 244.5 miles. This has a 21.5 gallon fuel tank. And in case you're wondering, it does occasionally go to 4 cylinders, but very rarely, only under like slight declines where it's not engine braking. From what I found is when it would go into 4 cylinders rather than 8. And the top speed, in case you're wondering, is 98 miles an hour, but I stuck to the speed limits, 70 to 75 typically, depending on where we were. Let's go see what the pump says. Here we go, using the same method, filling up the Wrangler 392. All right, here we go. Done filling her up. 47 bucks, 13 gallons. Let's do some math. Officially 246 miles according to GPS. We used just over 13 gallons of gas. That equates to 18.8 miles per gallon. That's pretty amazing for a 470 horsepower brick. A little bit off what the computer said, but not too far. Officially it's rated at 14 combined, 17 highway. And we did better than 17 highway going over 2 mountain passes. I gotta say, that is pretty impressive. I've driven other V6 Wranglers that, to be honest, aren't that much better than this on the highway. And I think that's just because of that, it's at such a low RPM going highway speeds that it just kind of putts along. Well, let me know what you think of the Wrangler in the comment section below. As always, this has been Tommy with the Fast Lane Car and TFL Off-Road. Check out TFLcar.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.